Welcome to MLT online classes. So in this lecture we are going to discuss about immune response. So what is immune response, students? It is the response of our body to a pathogen. How our body killing pathogens is called as immune response. So our body can kill pathogen, it will respond to a pathogen attack with the help of cells which is called as cell mediated immunity. So all the cells such as antigen presenting cells. What are those? Dendritic cells, B lymphocytes, macrophages, all those cells will come to the site of infection and they will eat the bacteria and they will kill the pathogens. So this is cell mediated immune response. And our body also kills pathogens by antibodies. So with the help of antibodies, it will neutralize or agglutinate or immobilize the bacteria or other microorganisms and they will kill the microorganisms. This kind of immune response is called as humoral immune response or antibody mediated immune response. So I will discuss about both cell mediated immune response and humoral immune response in detail in these lectures. Okay. So these are the two types, cell mediated immune response and humoral immune response. So first I will discuss about humoral immune response, then we will discuss about cell mediated immune response. So write the definition, students. Definition of immune response. It is a protective response of the body. It is a protective response of the body immune system to an antigen such as virus, parasites, bacteria or fungi by the help of either antibodies secreted by lymphocytes or with the help of direct attack with the help of cell mediated immune cells such as dendritic cells to kill foreign microorganisms. It is a protective response of the body immune system to an antigen such as virus, parasites, bacteria or fungi by the help of either antibodies secreted by B lymphocytes or by direct attack on pathogens via cell mediated immunity to kill the foreign microorganisms is called as immune response. So whenever these B cells or T cells have a problem, our body cannot kill pathogens and that condition is called as immunodeficiency diseases. Immunodeficiency diseases are arised due to an inability to produce an immune response, results in immunodeficiency diseases. One of the example is AIDS, such as AIDS. Then you need to know the difference between humoral immune response and cell mediated immune response. So obviously in humoral immune response, it is mediated by antibodies, right? Antibodies plays a crucial role in humoral immune response. And also humoral immune response provides primary defense against extracellular bacteria. All extracellular bacteria will be killed by humoral immune response. Bacteria which are came to our body either by gastrointestinal tract or respiratory tract. From these two routes, if we got any bacterial attack means those bacteria will be killed by antibodies. Whereas intracellular bacteria or intracellular microorganisms such as fungi, virus or bacteria can be killed by cell mediated immunity. Cell mediated, one of the best example intracellular bacterial infection is Mycobacterium tuberculosis or leprosy. So these two bacteria will live within the cells. They will infect the cells. So these kind of pathogens will be killed by cell mediated immunity. Also cell mediated immunity kills parasites such as Leishmania, Donovania and Treponema pallidum. So cell mediated immunity is responsible for killing intracellular pathogens, whereas humoral immunity is responsible for killing extracellular pathogens. Then cell mediated immunity involves in type 1, 2, 3 hypersensitivity reactions. Okay. Whereas type 4 hypersensitivity reaction is mediated by cell mediated immunity. Other than this, cell mediated immunity also involves in something called graft versus host disease. What is graft versus host disease, students? It is tissue transplantation rejection or tissue rejection is called as graft versus host diseases. This will be we can discuss in the future classes. Okay. So these are the differences between humoral immune response and cell mediated immune response. Humoral immune response prime major goal is to kill extracellular pathogens, whereas cell mediated immune response will kill intracellular pathogens. Humoral immune response involves in type 1, 2 and 3 hypersensitivity reactions, whereas hypersensitivity reaction 4 is mediated by cell mediated immune response. Also, his cell mediated immune response is responsible for graft versus host diseases. Then I discussed about some examples that you can study. Then let us see what is humoral immune response. So cell mediated immune response will be studied in next class. Okay. Meanwhile, let us focus on humoral immune response. In humoral immune response, you need to know how the body responded to a pathogen by antibodies. How antibodies are made by the body is studied in humoral immune response. So let us see in the next slide. So humoral immune response has 4 stages, students: lag phase, log phase, a plate and a phase of decline. So what are these 4 stages? Okay, so focus on this graph, students. Now how my body produced antibodies. So first I have an antigen exposure. So this is x-axis and y-axis. On x-axis I have time, whereas y-axis I have antibody is percentage. So first I have a antigen exposure. So a parasite entered into my body. Can my body immediately prepares antibodies? No, right? It needs some time to produce antibodies, right? So this time taking for the body to produce antibodies, this phase is called lag phase. So lag phase, after immediate antigen exposure, body cannot make antibodies. So that phase is called as lag phase. After one day, my body will slowly produce antibodies, right? So the concentration of antibodies in my body will slowly increase. So this phase of the phase of increased antibodies concentration is called as log phase. In log phase, we will see drastic increase in the concentration of antibodies. So after certain time, the amount of antibodies present in the blood will become constant. So I will have a constant amount of antibodies in my body for a certain period of time, and that period is called as plate. So in this plate time, antibodies will be in their peak concentrations. Then after 3 weeks, slowly these antibodies will be degenerated. My body will destroy these antibodies also. That is decline phase. This decline phase can be seen even after today I got infection and my antibodies may destroy after 40 years also. So when the age increases, number of antibodies in the plasma will be reduced. So that is why old people and small children are highly susceptible to infections, because their antibodies will be decreased in the old age, whereas in the baby in the young age they don't have antibodies. So that is why in the children and in adults, due to lack of antibodies, they are highly prone to infections, and this is called as immune response. So humoral immune response has 4 stages: lag phase, log phase, plate and decline phase. Okay. Then we need to understand something called primary immune response and secondary immune response. So what is primary immune response and secondary immune response? See, students, so these are the phases that I discussed. So first time antigen exposure leads to the development of only 40 mg antibodies. Say for example, after attack of a bacteria, I got 40 mg antibodies. Okay. Then slowly those antibodies will be decreased in my body. At this time, if I give once again the same antigen to my body, if the same bacteria attacks, means now my body will produce antibodies drastically. See how many antibodies created by the body. Here it is only 40 mg, whereas here it is 80 mg. Double to triple times antibodies are increased, right? So this is called secondary immune response. In the primary immune response, it has a very steady state, very low response. But when we give the same antigen second time, our body will produce very high amount of antibodies, and this is called secondary response. So primary response is first exposure. First exposure of antigen results in primary immune response, whereas second time exposure of the same antigen results in secondary immune response. Secondary immune response will stay longer period, whereas primary immune response will stay for a shorter period. Okay, then that is the concept. So we have something called primary immune response and secondary immune response. So primary immune response, difference between these two is this is a short phase, and in primary immune response IgM antibodies are produced. IgM antibodies are produced in primary immune response, whereas in secondary immune response IgG antibodies will be produced. IgG antibodies have a longer half-life compared to IgM antibodies. IgM antibodies will stay only for 1 to 2 days in the blood circulation, whereas IgG antibodies can stay up to 1 to 2 years in the circulation. Okay, so that is why all the vaccines or whatever it is, we will give booster doses. When we give the same antigen second time, that acts as a booster dose and it will drastically increase the immunity towards the pathogen. So that is why we used to have booster doses. So this is the same graph. Primary immune response, we have very less antibodies, and if we give the same antigen second time, we will have a second antigen exposure results in larger response, and response is very fast. Okay, so this is the concept of immune response. Then let us study about fate of antigen in the body. So the third one is fate of antigen. Okay, now a pathogen entered into my body, and what happened to that pathogen is the fate of antigens. So if I introduce, let us say like vaccines is the best example. You know what are vaccines? If I want to give vaccine of polio, I will literally inject polio antigen into your body. Literally I will inject killed polio virus into the body. So what body will think, okay, polio antigen came, and body will start producing antibodies, right? Now there is a problem. If I give these antigens into the blood, this blood has this blood will go to the spleen, liver, kidney and lung, right? And the spleen and liver will kill all the proteins. They will destroy the proteins. So if we are giving antigen via blood, almost 70 to 80% of antigens will be break down by spleen, liver, kidney and lung. So we won't get, and we won't get long immunity, right? If we give antigens to the blood, this blood will go to liver and liver will destroy all the antigens and it will be excreted in the urine. So administration via intravenous is not a good strategy to have a proper immunity. Rather than, the best method is to give antigens to the skin, subcutaneous antigen administration. If we give subcutaneous antigen administration, this antigen will go to the nearby lymph nodes, and lymph nodes will have macrophages. Macrophages will initiate cell mediated immunity, and the cells will start helper T cells. They will activate B cells to produce antibodies, whereas cytotoxic T cells will kill the pathogen. So subcutaneous administration of antigen is the best strategy to have lifelong immunity compared to intravenous administration of antigen. So this is what we will study in fate of antigens. Okay. Then we will discuss about production of antibodies by our body. I hope you already know how our body produces antibodies. So let me say once again, antigen exposure, antigen will be phagocytized by macrophage. Macrophage will phagocytize the antigen, resulting in antigen presentation. I hope you know what are the 4 stages of phagocytosis. What are those 4 stages, students? Chemotaxis, attachment, ingestion, digestion. After digestion, what the macrophage will do? It will express the pathogen molecules with the help of HLA2, right? With the help of HLA2 receptor, macrophage will express the antigens, pathogen antigens, and these antigens will be taken by helper T cell. Helper T cell will read the antigens with the help of T cell receptor. Then helper T cell will get activated, and it will activate into 2 forms, helper T cell 1 and helper T cell 2. Helper T cell 2 will activate B lymphocytes with some cytokines. So B lymphocytes will start producing, B lymphocytes will get activated. This activation of B lymphocytes is mediated by a theory called clonal proliferation theory. So B cells will undergo this phenomenon. After going into clonal selection, B cells will mature into two types, plasma B cells and memory B cells. Plasma B cells will start producing IgM antibodies. Okay, the primary antibodies always are IgM. So plasma B cells will produce IgM antibodies, and these IgM antibodies will convert to IgG antibodies, which will give secondary immune response, which is permanent immune response, whereas IgM antibodies will give temporary immune response, IgM. Okay, so this is how antibodies are produced by our body. So this is it. Then we can discuss about theories of antibody production. There are different types of theories how these antibodies are produced by B lymphocytes. One example is clonal proliferation. Other than this, we have two classical theories. One is instructive theory and second one is selective theory, and these theories will be discussed in the next lecture. So how antibodies produced by B lymphocytes will be discussed in the next lecture. Okay. Thank you, students. See you in the next class. Have a good day.